Quick, what is the most valuable resource in the world? Think fast. Time's up. If you guessed oil, nuclear energy, or the Dasani water in the Walmart backrooms, congratulations, you're fired. But if you guessed the humble homeless man, defender of freedom, and gas station cigarettes, then you've come to the right place. Today, I want to harness this invaluable resource and build an elite fighting force of homeless individuals to wage war across the Commonwealth in pursuit of every wastelander's ultimate goal, to become the CEO of a soda-themed amusement park with 0 human rights violations, and install the greatest Nuka Cola fan as operational manager of our soda slavery empire. But first, we must be frozen for 200 years and wait for our perfect genetic specimen to fall into our possession after getting into an alcoholic bar fight with God. They even had entertainment as we passed the time. With my wife dead and my infant son drafted into Scientology, our life was at its lowest point. But from the ashes of tragedy, a business opportunity was born. And like all great businesses, we would need a location to call home. Sanctuary was out of the question, as it is currently inhabited by giant roaches, mutated flies, and most traumatic of all, the British. So we would need a more suitable location for our headquarters. How about a run-down truck stop with everything we could possibly need? Plenty of resources, a complimentary pet, and only mild gang warfare with upstart competitors. It was perfect. After providing suitable accommodations for our soon-to-be resident, it was time to begin our trek to Diamond City. While on the way to my future investment, I visited Drumlin Diner, where I encountered a business dispute between a drug dealer and the store owner. Given the implications of morality on selling drugs to clearly downtrodden individuals, I agree to help the dealer in exchange for our first monetary investment in our business career. The first of many. Arriving at Diamond City, we were about to engage in vital negotiations for the future of our business. For the low cost of a single caffeinated beverage, we now have a lifetime contract to our cloning template. Now, it's just time to acquire genetic material. With our genetic material acquired, we now have our first generation of homeless warriors. But what great foe deserves to witness our glorious might? It would appear the subterranean dwelling competition are attempting to unionize and engage in unauthorized collective bargaining. This is no good and must be stopped. Our glorious clones destroy the mole menace without a single casualty. With our clones now battle-hardened, it was time to outsource their violence for monetary gain. However, it turns out having a bunch of homeless men run towards raiders with automatic weapons decreases their life expectancy substantially, as we lost 40% of our army for a bucket of green paint. I would consider the loss of 4 homeless men for a single bucket of paint and 300 caps to be acceptable. We replaced our casualties in preparation of our next goal. Hidden in the subway is Vault 114, where resident detective Nick Valentine was being held hostage by a group of Mafia cosplayers. And as the only one capable of identifying an individual based on male pattern baldness, I knew we needed his help. So, we armed our clones with whatever we could gather, from advanced weaponry to actual pieces of lumber, and prepared for the bloodbath. Except it wasn't going to be our blood. Mostly. Because with the power of caffeine and subliminal messaging, our group of homeless conscripts had transformed into a force of nature, clearing out the triggermen in the vault with the ferocity of meth-addicted chimpanzees. After finding Nick Valentine, we begin our escape. The only one standing in our way was Skinny Malone and his group of thugs. But after wiping out his whole gang with a band of caffeine-addicted homeless men, I was feeling confident. That's not good. After having our whole workforce liquidated from a firing squad, I hired 10 replacements to finish the job by beating Skinny Malone to death with their bare hands, allowing us to save Nick Valentine at the cost of only 12 homeless men. Heading to Nick's office, we spent hours discussing the socioeconomic factors that led to a bald man kidnapping our son, to which Nick has the answer based on lack of hair care description alone.
You didn't hear the name Kellogg at all, did you?
Our kidnapper is a cereal brand? If there's one thing worse than kidnapping, it's competition. But we will need a new location with plenty of real estate for my industrialized autism. We begin our assault on the castle with the subtlety of a car crash as we watch a homeless man beat a crab with a baseball bat for 10 minutes. It didn't take long for our first wave to be murdered by the crustacean inhabitants. No problem, 10 more should suffice. After having our workforce decimated, the Mirelurk Queen arrives to personally evict us from her property. I had faith in my employees until I witnessed one get immediately liquefied and watched the Queen annihilate my workforce. We spent the next 30 minutes sending homeless men to fight the kaiju-sized crustacean, knowing that their lives were measured in health percentage. With the callous sacrifice of 53 loyal clones, our new real estate was secure, We pay respect to our fallen clone warriors as they helped us establish the next step in our expansion, and even in death, they can still be served. We even started expanding to the breakfast market. But with casualty rates this extreme from a simple shellfish, it was frankly unsustainable, and I fear our goal of caffeinated slavery was fading away. So it is time to take extreme measures to upgrade our arsenal. By sacrificing exactly 7 homeless men underneath a rocket engine, we acquire enough weapons to equip our army for the foreseeable future. Very nice. With our clones now properly equipped, Kellogg does not stand a chance. Everything has led up to this moment. To see if an army of homeless men are strong enough to topple the cereal brand responsible for kidnapping our son. The fighting was fierce, as my army fought for every inch of ground, while I instead marvel at the ability of being able to loot this man of his belongings after watching him get vaporized on an atomic level. We make it to Kellogg, where he probably planned to beg for mercy from a band of homeless drug addicts. It was a short talk. With the breakfast industry secured and my wife avenged, we are now level 11, so we should be ready for our great expansion to Nuka World. Arriving at the Nuka-Cola transit station, we see that it's being guarded by a group of mercenaries and definitely someone's fetish, Guardbot. Truly a dangerous combo. We were gonna need a plan to get past them, and I have just the idea. Welcome to Operation Homeless Distraction. A 2-step plan where we sprint past the guards as they are distracted by the dozen angry homeless men and enter the station, only for some of the guards to follow us in and get gunned down at the cost of only one of our workers. Worked like a charm. Hopping on the tram to Nuka World, our interns could barely contain their excitement, with a couple almost vibrating out of reality. I didn't want to break the bad news to them, but with the challenges up ahead, their chance of seeing the rest of the theme park were not great. Room 1 was a room filled with machine gun turrets, which should be no problem. However, the workers decided to sit this one out by conveniently refusing to enter the room. No idea if it was the machine gun turrets or the terrible hygiene policy that made them refuse to enter. Either way, we had to deal with the turrets ourselves. Rooms 2 and 3 were a combination of explosive traps and barrels to speedrun cancer, which claimed one of the lives of our workers. Room 4 was a group of deactivated turrets and a key to exit the room sitting in the open. No idea why this one is a challenge. I think I get it now. After replacing our workforce, the next room was full of landmines. You can take it slow and disarm them, or sprint through at top speed and jump into a pit full of crustaceans. Now watch as your workforce stands next to a flaming truck until it violently detonates, claiming half of them in the blast. After having 20 members of our staff experience various forms of liquidation, it was time for the final part of the gauntlet. Something's not right here. It would appear the soon-to-be former CEO of Nuka World had one last trick up his sleeve. By systematically breaking the laws of reality, he created the perfect counter to our workforce, as they could not cope with this new plane of existence. So, it was going to be a showdown. The Nuka-Cola CEO Coulter with his invincible armor, and us with a children's squirt gun and an enormous amount of drugs. I like to explain the battle with a quote from Sun Tzu. To confuse your enemies, first confuse yourself. And with the mild brain aneurysm the arena was causing me, the former CEO didn't stand a chance. After violently murdering the previous leader, we are now CEO of Nuka World, with dozens of new employees added to our workforce. But our expansion was only just beginning. You see, Nuka World is divided into 6 parks, and we currently only have 1. As we claim more parks, we will need to assign them to one of the 3 gangs of Nuka World, so time to meet them all. The first on the list was the Disciples, a group of edgy cosplayers whose primary pastime consists of listening to My Chemical Romance and cock and ball torture. And as a person who likes my torture to be consensual, this gang was clearly bad for business. Next up were the Operators, a group focused on maximizing human suffering for profit, which resonated with me deeply. Lastly was the Pack, a group that answers the question, what if you gave furries automatic weapons? With zoo exhibits my workers developed quite the fondness for. Overall, I would rate them at just above the threshold for violent eradication on the spot. But enough discussion, time for market expansion. The first park on the list is Galactic Zone, a space adventure theme park overrun with killer robots and the very deceased previous residents. Turns out the CEO of OpenAI demanded the residents purified water to power their server farms. And after denying the robots the precious liquid, they entered a homicidal rage and murdered the inhabitants and now roam the park. Now we have to recover 20 star cores to repair the mainframe and disable the robots. Only problem? They are scattered around the park, guarded by robots with weapons of mass caffeination. And while the indomitable human spirit is strong, it seems to meet its match when exposed to laser weaponry. so we were gonna have to move quickly. Our first stop was Vault-Tec Among the Stars, a recreation of the classic Vault experiences such as comfortable living arrangements with all the essential amenities, and receiving a lobotomy with a railroad spike. Feels just like home. And just like 2015 sensation Hitchbot, the robots here would face the same fate, being bludgeoned by the homeless American spirit of Philadelphia. But not without casualties increasing at an alarming rate. Doing some math, we were on average losing 3 homeless men per robot. And given the hundreds of robots roaming the park, at this rate, our casualties were going to outpace the population of a small country. So, we were going to need an easier target. We decided on Starlight Interstellar Theater, as a theater should be a soft target for mass homeless violence. I was very wrong, as the theater was somehow more dangerous than a fucking vault, and my unfortunate workers paid the price of my hubris by dying in their dozens. But, as I calmly hid in a bathroom stall as my workforce was busy being exterminated, I was able to grab the last star cores and return to the mainframe so I could deactivate the robots. And just like that, Galactic Zone was ours, for the price of only 103 homeless men melted into piles of ash. But the cost of progress waits for no one. We must continue. This time to the Wild West. Dry Rock Gulch is a western theme park inhabited by dune sandworms and dead bodies, which already makes it easier than Galactic Zone. However, don't get too comfortable, as the insects roaming the park have developed quite the taste for human flesh. We meet the sheriff and he tells us that to claim the park, we will need to remove the man-eating worms from this building. However, the door is locked and we will need to complete 3 tasks from the various robots around the park to gain access. The first task was from the Giddy Up Kid, where he wants us to retrieve his missing steed, whose likely location was located inside of a mason jar. So I instead asked him to politely hand over the code and to never curse me with the knowledge of his after-work activities again. The second task was from Doc Phosphate, who wanted us to deliver alcoholic beverages to various customers of the park. Only 2 problems. 1. The customers of the park are all dead. And 2. I'm a raging alcoholic. So, I delivered the drinks to the various dead residents, then immediately stole them for later consumption, before returning to the bartender for the second code. The final task was a duel with One-Eyed Ike. Now, I want to know who at Nuka-Cola decided it would be a good idea to hand parkgoers loaded firearms before shooting them dead in the streets. Because honestly, that might be my favorite idea. After winning the duel, we are given the last code so we can clear the mine of bloodworms and claim our second park. With only 8 members of our staff becoming sustenance for the park wildlife, we completed Dry Rock Gulch with minimal casualties. Onward to Safari Adventure. Arriving at Safari Adventure, I was greeted by a half-naked man and a mutated lizard doing battle at a comfortable 25 frames per second. So I just stood by and watched with the fear that intervening may cause my PC to violently detonate. With the creature defeated, we watch as the unknown man phases through reality before introducing himself as Sito. He explains to us that Safari Adventure has an iguana problem, as years of cloning abuse have led to mutated gator claws roaming the park. And the only way to claim the park is to enter the big triangle house and shut down the cloning machine. And as the Wasteland's expert in cloning technology, it was paramount we get rid of the competition. So this park was not just an extermination mission, it was also a challenge, to see who is the better cloning template, a caffeine-crazed homeless man or a genetically enhanced lizard. The fight was on. But first, Sito offered his help to destroy the gators. Normally, I wouldn't trust a man whose wardrobe reminds me of a Vegas stripper, but I gave him a chance to convince me. So, with our army and single caveman companion, we make our way through the park exterminating the gator claws while only taking minor casualties. Until we made it to the Angry Anaconda, where 3 gator claws decided to ignore our gentleman's agreement of running into machine gun fire one at a time, and massacred my entire workforce. I promptly retreated and recruited more help as the gator claws were busy beating the ever-living shit out of Sito. However, I knew his massive pectoral muscles would soften the impact of dozens of stab wounds, so we returned with our next wave and bludgeoned the gator claws to death with our bare hands. We retrieved the passcode and entered the cloning facility to shut it down. But there was going to be a problem. You see, gunning down mutated lizards is easy when you are in an open area with plenty of space. But this underground location was the exact opposite, and gave a huge advantage to our adversary when their primary method of attack is to rip our arms and legs off. So it's safe to say that the casualty rate down here jumped exponentially. But after decorating the room with a few dozen more employees, We shut down the cloning machine and liberated Safari Adventure. Doing some math, the 21 gators we exterminated here cost me 74 homeless men being turned into strawberry jam. That comes out to 3.5 homeless men for a single mutated alligator. So, if you are ever in a dark alley at night and have the decision between one 12-foot tall mutated gator and 3.5 homeless men, just remember, which is more dangerous? With over half the parks in our possession, it's on to the fourth park. Kitty Kingdom, a children's amusement park with several rides that will break safety regulations and very possibly your spine. So, we were gonna have to fix that with violence. But, before you get any ideas, don't worry.
The kids are already dead.
We only have to kill the staff, so everything is above board. Our target was Oswald the Outrageous, the de facto ruler of Kitty Kingdom, as the rest of the staff are feral ghouls, who primarily spend their time eating our homeless employees. But the ghouls weren't the only problem, as around the park are mist sprayers spraying a constant stream of radiation, so we were on the clock to find and defeat Oswald before my workforce all died from stage 4 cancer. The first location we checked was the Fun House, which sadly was not fun and wasn't a house, as the most entertaining part of the building was Oswald throwing a grenade at us and watching an employee do that one thing at the public pool where you pretend to be a dead body. With Oswald already gone, we next went to King Cola's castle, where about a dozen ghouls followed us inside, until they were quickly ambushed by the 24 homeless men currently squatting here. The casualties were horrific, but the theater was ours. Until Oswald made his appearance monologuing about his gift that he wanted to show us. He then threw approximately 30 Molotovs at me and my staff before running away. We weren't going to take that disrespect lightly, so we doubled our workforce to 20 individuals and armed them with a variety of gear, before confronting Oswald on the roof where the fight was on. Oswald proceeded to immolate dozens of our employees. With my workforce dwindling, we made the decision to airdrop another 30 homeless men into the fight, but even that was not enough. As Oswald continued to murder all 50 homeless men, it was time for the nuclear option. I ran to the center of the arena and spawned up 40 more homeless men who charged Oswald as I lined up the perfect shot to end his rampage. And we claimed Kitty Kingdom for our cause. Between Oswald, the ghouls, and the radiation flooding the park, we lost 183 workers. Okay, make that 184. The final park is World of Refreshment, a Nuka-Cola bottling plant now inhabited by our sworn enemy. And the crustaceans here have developed quite the taste for soda and Cherenkov radiation, causing them to glow a bright blue. So we were going to have to eradicate them to claim the park. I want to say this was easy, as crabs normally do not rank high on the apex predator tier list. But these crustaceans' diet must have consisted of irradiated soda and steroids, as it has given them the strength of Sam Sulik, so that they could bludgeon me and my staff to death multiple times. So, I spent the next hour slowly sending homeless men into the industrial meat grinder, trading the lives of my workers for the satisfaction of eradicating this endangered species. With the inside secure from the sacrifice of over 100 of our employees, we could head outside and deal with the remaining crabs, which led to dozens more being ripped to shreds by the Myalert Kings roaming around the complex. After dispatching the majority of the crabs, the only one standing was the Nuka-Alert Queen. But this was a special occasion, as the death of the Queen would solidify our capture of every park. So I nominated one of my employees to be the one to carry out the final task and dressed him for the occasion, before handing him a nuclear catapult and eagerly awaiting the results. Not exactly the correct target. Second attempt, our employee missed the Queen with 2 nukes before being dissolved by acidic vomit. Not all workers are made the same. Third try, and our replacement employee successfully sent the Nuka-Alert Queen to the seafood restaurant in the sky, and we could raise the flag on the final park of Nuka World. With 197 of our employees being reduced to food for a bunch of extinct shellfish, the only thing remaining was to head to the power plant and restore power to the park, at the minor cost of 8 more employees. But hey, we get this cool fireworks show, so that's something. And just like that, every park in Nuka World belonged to us, and our power had evolved from homeless men in rags punching rats to a fully equipped private military. So I wanted to return to the Commonwealth to show just how far we've truly come. And there was no better place than Concord, where hiding in a museum is Preston Garvey, the moral backbone of the Commonwealth. So we clear out Concord's raiders and Deathclaw, after which Preston asked us to join him at Sanctuary, to which we agree.
I'm in.
Really brings a tear to your eye, huh, Preston? And there we have it. We took a man at his lowest point, and through hard work, strategic downsizing, and many employee write-offs, we successfully established our soda slavery empire, and installed the greatest Nuka-Cola fan as chief operating manager. And with our final employee casualty report standing at 671 workers, our work was finished, and like all great leaders, it was time to step down so we could be one with nature. You know, I wonder what happened to our sun.